Would you like to see my very first boat? Nope, that skiff isn't mine. No, any of these boats on the right aren't mine. Here's my boat. It's this white one with an orangey red stripe on the left. It's a 1975 Renken Runabout. I find it hard to believe that it was 5 years ago that I started this channel essentially and started becoming Wayne the Boat Guy with this boat right here. Well, let me give you a little bit of a backstory on this boat and how we got there. In the summer of 2018, we moved to about a block from the water. There was a place we could keep a boat. A few months after we moved in, we thought we may want to look into getting a boat. We set ourselves a very limited budget of $2,000 all in because we had never owned a boat before. I had never operated a boat, and we thought, what if we don't like it? What if we're no good at it? You know, what if boating's just not for us? I found this little beauty on Craigslist. The ad for this boat is really what spoke to me though. 19-foot Renken in great condition. Electronics include VHF, Garmin, GPS fish finder, and new AM/FM Bluetooth stereo. New deck with 3/4 sealed plywood and 24-ounce biaxial cloth and LED deck lighting. I didn't know what any of that meant, but it sounded good. Air horn and 2 deep cycle batteries, one new this season. I fish and tow a lot and prefer a clear deck, but can accept any seating system. Engines is a 1985 90 horsepower Evinrude VRO with low hours installed last year and runs great with great compression. Also a 1965 Evinrude 6 horsepower fisherman kicker for trolling, which also runs great. Trailer, electric winch, anchor, fuel tanks, and an extra 15-inch prop for quick pulling of skiers or tubers, and plenty of rod storage, and service manuals. I recently acquired a new boat and have owned this one since 1989 and hate to see it go. Great knockabout for a new boater, all offers considered. Great knockabout for new boater, all offers considered. Speak in my language. This boat sounded perfect. He had 20 photos. The price was less than $2,000. Had a trailer, 2 motors, and work had been done on it. And this guy had owned this boat for a long time. And next thing we know, it's in our yard. Now, the funny thing is, we didn't even have a tow hitch, and I had never towed anything before either. So we actually asked the seller if he could deliver it to our house. So there it is, sitting in the yard. Taking a closer look at it, here's the helm, and you can see it's got some very basic controls. And Renken boats were never a really popular brand. If you see some of these close-up photos I took when we first bought the boat so I could remember how to store it for the wintertime, the cleats weren't in great shape. The gel coat had a lot of cracking in it, but it was an old boat, and it was cheap. I wanted to take a minute and talk about the helm area of the boat because I thought that was very interesting. Up here we had a tachometer, and I don't think that ever worked. It might have worked occasionally, but it didn't really work. There was a main power switch that was way up here. That would actually turn on the power so that I could start the boat. We had a compass, which I didn't really ever need. I did have a volt gauge, which was really cool, and you could select which battery. So this is battery 1 and battery 2, and it would show the voltage of them. And so I could look to see whether or not one of them was, fully charged or charging as we were underway, which was very nice. I used that a lot. This switch here was for navigation lights. This was a manual bilge pump operation, so I could test my bilge pump before I went out. This button here operated the great big air horn trumpets that were on the side of the boat, which were really cool. Down here were the deck lights. Here was my VHF radio mic. And this was a cigarette lighter jack or whatever for, plugging in stuff. That didn't work. That was everything there was for the helm of this boat. Hey, if you're liking this video, please be sure to give it a like. So our first order of business was to get this boat properly registered, get the necessary safety equipment that we needed to be able to take this boat out for the first time. It was the end of the season. It was already October, and I wanted to try out my new toy. So for our very first trip out, I did a lot of research beforehand about how to launch a boat, making sure I knew how the controls worked, bringing everything with me. We picked a weekday, middle of the day, when there weren't a lot of other people around, so I wasn't going to be a problem at the boat ramp. And in this photo right here, that's my daughter. Some people think that that's a young version of me. It's not. That's my daughter. She was just finishing up high school, and she agreed to be my first victim, really. This is her at the boat ramp right after we got the boat in the water, and it was a struggle to get the boat in the water because I had never backed up a trailer before. I had never launched a boat before, so this was all very, very new to us. So my daughter got this picture of me at the helm, and this was on our very first boat trip out in our new boat. Now, this boat was empty. It had no seating in there, so we actually would bring along with us a couple of folding chairs, and those cables that are wound up there on the floor, that's for the electric winch. And so I just kept those in the boat, and as you can see, there's the 2 motors on the back, and those, what people call those, the rocket launchers. As I mentioned, there were some challenges with getting the engine started. Once we got it started, we were good. But as a rule, what I tended to do was, once I got it started, I didn't shut the engine off. I would leave the engine running the whole time we were out. So even if we went somewhere where we were anchored for a little while or we were just resting, I wouldn't shut the engine off because I was afraid it wouldn't start again. So there are these photos from whenever we would be out, and you can see that the engine is running there, engine's running there, and every time we were out, we never shut the engine off. But what we quickly realized after a few trips out is that we were hooked. We liked having a boat, and we liked boating. So it was the end of the season, as I mentioned, and we had taken the boat out probably about a half a dozen times that first October, and it was time to bring the boat in for the winter. I couldn't get the electric winch to work, and being it was the end of the season, and I didn't even know where to go to buy boat parts, I ended up buying probably one of the most expensive mechanical winches you could get. I got a Fulton F2. That actually ended up being my first YouTube videos I made as Wayne the Boat Guy. It's still on my channel, and it's a terrible video. We also had these concrete blocks that I would put underneath the back of the trailer. And the reason we had those blocks was because I would have my trailer set with the bow up a little bit high, and I would get into the boat to walk around, and the boat would actually tip with the trailer. Front of the trailer would tip up off the ground, and the engine would actually dig into the soil. So I had to put some concrete blocks underneath the back of the trailer to keep the trailer from tipping whenever I was up inside of the boat. These were things I was figuring out as I was going along. I didn't have anybody to show me the proper way to do things or, what kind of pitfalls I could expect. And that's the advantage of the fact that this was a cheap old boat, because I wasn't taking a whole lot of chances by not knowing what I was doing. So now for 2019, we had seats in our boat, and I had a little bit more knowledge because I had looked up some stuff and learned a few things and tried a few things. One of the things I wasn't too sure about was parking at the marina. And part of the reason I had a problem was because the bow of our boat is where you had to enter the boat from. So you would walk across the bow of the boat to come in through the windshield. And I mounted a fender across the bow and then another one at the bulkhead of the pier to keep the bow of the boat from getting scraped up on the pier as we had it pulled very close to the pier. So there was a challenge there with that until somebody showed me a better way to do it. And the better way that they showed me was by utilizing the weighted pulleys that were at the stern of the boat to hold the boat tightly in the center of the slip, and then use one particular line off of the bow eye onto a center cleat to pull the boat close to the pier when we wanted to get on and off of the boat, and then you release that line and the boat would sit centered in the slip. This was a lot better for all of us because it made getting on and off the boat very easy, and it allowed me to keep the boat well away from the pier whenever we weren't getting on and off the boat. And while I had the boat in the water for the season, I took that opportunity to do some upgrades to this trailer. The trailer was a roller trailer, and many of the rollers were in terrible shape, missing or damaged. And what I decided to do was get rid of these rollers because replacing them was going to be expensive. And I actually fabricated my own bunks to put in there where the rollers were. I just left rollers at the very end of it and fabricated some bunks. And that was another very short, very bad YouTube video that I made early on. And here you can see the bunks that are on the trailer. And I put a new keel roller on there at the back, that yellowy one. And I saved a lot of money rather than trying to redo the rollers for that trailer. So the next thing we tackled was a bimini top. And we were using the boat more than ever. But what I wasn't using very much was that kicker motor. Other than testing it out once or twice, I wasn't using it at all. And so I decided to package it all up and put it up for sale, and some young guy bought it. So then the next thing I tackled were the wheels. My tires and rims were extremely rusty. Matter of fact, the lug nuts were rusted to the rims and to the studs, and the tires would go flat after a few hours. When I looked at what boat trailer tires and rims cost, I was kind of shocked, especially since I was going to need new hubs and probably put bearing buddies on. So what I did was I bought new hubs and bearing buddies and actually got tires and wheels from a junkyard from a car. Because my boat ramp is only around the corner, I wasn't worried about getting the proper tires and rims for my trailer. I just went ahead and got these because I didn't have any tags for the trailer, the lights didn't work, and the trailer would never pass inspection in the state of Maryland. And by this time, I had gotten all of my engine starting problems completely sorted out. Matter of fact, I made a video about starting a two-stroke outboard engine because I found it was so challenging to understand all the nuances of it, and people still watch that video and to this day comment on the fact how I really helped them because they were struggling as a new boater to try to get their old two-stroke running. And once I figured out the nuances of how to get this one running, it would start for me every time. Cold, warm, wet, dry, sitting for a week, sitting for a moment. I could always get it started right away once I learned the nuances of what this particular engine needed. So we started taking this boat everywhere and doing all kinds of things with it that summer. Matter of fact, we took it all the way down to Annapolis one time and parked it in Ego Alley. For those of you who don't know, Ego Alley is where all of the really nice boats park down in Annapolis. When we decided to go down, it was a weekday during the pandemic, so there weren't a lot of people down there. But while we were down there, I was able to shoot this shot right here. Yep, there's my boat in Ego Alley. So that was a lot of fun. By this time, we had learned a lot about this boat. I understood the nuances of it. I knew some of its weaknesses and its strengths. So this is the spring of 2020. I had actually tried a couple other things. Matter of fact, you can see here where the lower part of the outboard motor, I had repainted it because it needed painting, and I just used whatever paint I had. I didn't put any special marine paint on there or anti-fouling paint. And I had worked on the transom a little bit, which I knew was in bad shape. But this boat had served us well because it taught us the things that we liked and what we didn't like, and what we wanted in our next boat. So when I put it up for sale, as you can see, the Fulton F2 winch is now gone because I had moved that over to our Four Winds Horizon 230 that we replaced this boat with. But other things were all left in place and upgrades had been made, and I was able to sell the boat for a price I was happy with to a fella who was a new boater. And he was very happy with his purchase as well. So if I was to do it all again, would I have bought this same boat? I think I would have. I think it was a very good learning boat. I think it was big enough and small enough, old enough, and rugged enough to be able to try out. You know, I learned what a bilge pump was on this boat. I learned what tilt and trim are like. I understood about things like bimini tops and cleats and putting a boat in a marina and all those kinds of things that I knew nothing about. And this boat was perfect to learn all that sort of stuff. I'm sure some of these other people in the marina were laughing at me periodically as I was out there struggling with things or improvising, trying to figure things out. And there were some times where people would show me things and teach me stuff, and I was very grateful to them. But more often than not, I was kind of doing things on my own, learning as I went. And as I learned things, this channel has been how I take people along for the journey. So anyway, that's the story of my first boat. Here's another video for you right here. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts or about your first boat in the comments below.